Cool. This is a SIG network meeting for July 21st, 2022. Let's start off with some triage as per usual. Dan, do you still have them up since you were looking at them?
Yep, I can share.
Perfect.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so worker node not showing external DNS address. This is more of a support issue. I tried to respond to this one. I think they need some external configuration for AWS if that's what they're using. Otherwise, other cloud provider support. We don't usually do support issues. So like, what do we want to keep this one open for a little bit and see if it gets resolved by next meeting, or close it out?
I would usually do my best to answer and then close it and just let them know that it doesn't look like an issue in Kubernetes, and that's why I'm closing it.
Okay, well, I'll assign myself, leave it open for a little bit and then close it. All right. So this one is a little bit older. We probably covered it last meeting, and it's kind of in the same boat. It's more of a support thing. I don't think it has much to do with Cube at this point. So leave that one open too.
Probably. Should we mark it as support and accepted?
All right. And sorry, this one, how to set multiple node port ranges. I don't believe that we support this yet at this point, because service node port range only takes a single range as far as I can tell. So this one would need some kind of PR or enhancement. Is anybody thinking about doing this or working on it at this time?
I don't think that you have to change the allocator. I have a kept to change the allocator for the IP addresses, and if that works, it can be expanded for the node ports. But I don't see this.
But I mean, what they're talking about, I want to export port 80 as a node port. Like, I don't think that I'm not sure.
No.
It seems more like they're trying to use the feature incorrectly.
So what they want to do is to say, I want to export from 30,000 to 32, like, I mean, they want to field in services to define the range, or what?
Yeah, they want a range, but then they also want other things outside that range.
I mean, I agree with Dan, though. Winship as well. Like, it sounds like they're maybe not understanding what to use node ports for.
So I'm going to assign it to Dan since he touched it, and he can respond and say, you're holding it wrong. All right, mark net IPv4 IP local reserve ports as a safe sysctl.
This is not a Kubernetes thing, I don't think. This is like a...
I think that there was a group tagging these things. I don't know. I have to check.
Like, Kubernetes doesn't provide any way to set sysctls per pod. This is a CNI plugin thing. Possibly an OpenShift specific thing.
Should we ask which platform they're asking this
Yeah,
for?
you can assign this one to me too, Dan, if you want.
Okay. Thanks.
I think the node team does maintain a list of safe syscuttles.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the node then. No, I think that in some place there is a list with these syscalls.
Yeah.
Okay,
Maybe
there may be
redirect
two
this to
different
node team?
ways of setting them then, because one of them is certainly via a CNI plugin, but maybe there's another way.
Let's find out.
Well, he's saying that this one isn't in whatever
Right,
list.
right.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so there is a list. It exists. It's still assigned to you, Dan. So you can follow. Wait, no, not assigned. Who wants to take this? Who wants to follow up on this one?
Should we tag it with SIG node, by the way?
Sure.
I think it's a kubelet.
Assigned to me. I remember. I don't know if someone setting this is called for the ping and for other things. I just need to find this.
All right. Next, common labels versus pod labels, error in casting, and then pod selector match labels, network policy.
They clearly know what they are talking about and are not explaining it well at all.
I think that they are trying to use customize for generating something and it's not working. Can be that or can be 200 different things. I can follow up. I got it. Is
I don't think we mark it as accepted at this
Oh, that you're right.
point.
yeah,
right?
yeah. It's just to do the asking the questions
You're right.
and close it.
Okay. So that leaves us with, let's see, multiple node port ranges we handled those. I didn't see any updates for the Flaky test feature, external traffic policy. Maybe it's worth taking the last couple minutes to just see what the status is on these.
Which one is that?
So this is Flaky test feature, external traffic policy. And you last commented 22 days ago.
That's before vacations. I don't remember the passwords. I'm not going to remember it.
Yeah, and I think we said let's wait for Tim, but he's not here this week, so.
I know what happens. I know what happens. And I think the person has a PR. So when you have a node port, the test allocates one randomly, but the test has one hardcode node port. So eventually the random port hits the assigned in the test statically and it flakes. But I mean, the logic to change the logic is very common.
Okay.
I think that let's wait for Tim. He changed all this logic and.
So is it valid? Should we accept it?
Yeah, it's valid. The bug is legit.
Okay. All right. And topology aware hint does not consider node taints. Last comment from Dan Winship.
This is the one with the topology, how to.
Yeah,
Robert here.
I've been involved in this thread too. I think it's being handled. This is almost a feature request. I should follow up, I think because the idea of node taints is something that we are intentionally ignoring because we just can't or can't scalably do that. It means tracking number of nodes, ratio of nodes, etc. per service instead of per cluster. Yeah, assign it to me anyways. I think I'm already assigned.
Yeah, you are. Should I accept it?
I mean, the statement's true. So yeah, we can accept it. I don't know that we're going to be able to fix it.
Okay. Well, and that's fine. Like, we've triaged this issue. There's been a lot of discussion. And I guess once we figure out whether we'll fix it or not, then we can make that determination and close.
Yeah.
All right. And last one for today. 2 default storage classes should be handled better. Last one was Tim. I think we can just leave this with Tim.
Should it be accepted?
This was fixed.
Probably, yeah.
I think there's a PR open for it.
Okay, they fixed it. They fixed the one of the ingress class and it's missing the other one.
Okay.
So it's missing the SIG network one is fixed, so we can remove SIG network from that. Now it's waiting for storage.
It's remove SIG, right? That's the key.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. And yep. Okay. Well, we'll just remove SIG network. They can figure out, other SIGs can figure out if they want to accept it or not. All right. And out of time. Back to you, Casey.
Cool. Thanks, Dan. Looks like the next item is just a reminder that the 125 code freeze is in 2 weeks on August 2nd. So if you're working on code, keep that date in mind. I don't know if whoever put that on wanted to say anything else about it, but I will assume not. And then after that was Antonio.
Yeah, we need to thank Ricardo for his spelunking on containers. I've tested the PR. The PR, I had to fight with the promotion machinery, but now I have a PR and it's working. If Rob and the other person, I don't know, that tested the image and checked the vulnerabilities, or anybody else wants to test the image, just comment on the PR. If not, I think that we should merge before code freeze, so this start to solve. And because once we cut, I think that in OpenShift they are going to get the images. I don't know if we have to do more steps, but the point is, if we want to move in this release with this image, we should start testing as soon as possible. But the PR is ready, so nothing else on my side. We can move to the next point.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Thanks to you and also Ricardo for working on that. I think the next was Lara Lorenz.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I wanted to give a little info of something that's going on in SIG multi-cluster, which is the SIG I'm most member-y of. So I'm going to share my screen because I did bring a few slides, but I think possibly many people in this call know about this project already, either because they've come to SIG MC, I have come here and talked about it a little bit in connection to the MCS API, which is the SIG MC project, and also went to Cluster API a while ago, which has some overlap here, but I'm going to recite a little bit here for SIG Network and kind of put it on the record. And hopefully everyone can see my screen. But basically, I just want to share some information about this API project, and particularly that the CRD, which is the way it's implemented, is currently in alpha. And then ask or just socialize a little bit any potential use cases that SIG Network or its related projects might want to collaborate on if that is relevant, and just make myself available as a point of contact for that. So just the brief background is there's this KEP 2149 for SIG multi-cluster that describes this about API, which is also available in alpha Kubernetes SIG /about API. And the point of this is to be a cluster scoped cluster property CRD that just has like key value pairs of arbitrary properties about a cluster. And the idea is to make information about a cluster discoverable from like one central place and make the cluster sort of self-aware. So I think historically things like this may have been achieved through like annotations on like node objects or like some sort of like custom cluster object, but like specific to a certain API like the cluster lifecycle APIs. But this is trying to go for something that's a little bit more abstract and potentially more general purpose, even though we did come up with it at SIG MC for a specific purpose. So we described it for the purposes of the MCS API. We have these two CRs that have well-known names that have to follow some certain properties so that they're useful to us in that context. And so you can definitely click through the KEP if you want to know all the details about that. But there's one for a cluster's name, and there's one for a cluster's cluster set membership, which is the unit of clusters working together in a multi-cluster world. Small little asterisk, it so happens that we want to rename the one previously known as idcase.io. So if you like to give your feelings about names of things, there's a survey link at the bottom so you can, you know, make your opinions known. So this is like some background about this project and why SIG MC, specifically the MCS API, needed it. But the CRD itself is very general purpose. It's names and values. That value can take any form. And again, the overall intent of the CRD is to store any arbitrary properties about a cluster that in this cluster local CRD. And there's room in the KEP that other implementations or just anybody else could store any other arbitrary properties they want, as long as they follow some restrictions, which is basically not to conflict with the ones already reserved, have to use some sort of suffix, and can't use the reserved K8s.io or Kubernetes IO suffixes unless it goes through like API review and everything. So some ideas just generally that are part of the KEP are like if some cool implementation has some sort of like special fingerprint thing that could store some like arbitrary JSON, or if you wanted to store like the network name of the cluster for your MCS implementation, maybe you could suffix that. But then this kind of leads into like maybe there's some stuff that like SIGs or SIG subprojects might want to store here, and maybe even make them well-known names that like follow this Kubernetes suffix.
Can you give? Sorry, hey Laura. Can you give some insight as to when a project should put it here versus creating a singleton CRD?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is probably still to be determined what the best practice is. I think there's a lot of heritage of making singleton CRDs, and also to put, as Sora mentioned before, annotations on like node objects and just go and find a way to go find them. So I think this roadshow is kind of to gauge some interest. We definitely needed this for MCS somewhere, and we chose to go this way, and we want it to be generally useful so that other properties are all in the same place, so we don't have to keep running around to like different implementations. But I'm not sure I have the clout yet to say like this is the case where you use this, and you know this is the case where you use that.
Yeah, it would be good. I'm sure you're going to cover it in the KEP to kind of describe how to make that choice, at least for implementers?
Sure. Okay. So this is that's kind of the general situation. I do think maybe I can put together in the KEP some more thoughts about why putting your arbitrary properties here instead of in an annotation or in a singleton can be covered. But just some brief thoughts of maybe what SIG network might have some jurisdiction over and want to store somewhere, though you all are definitely the experts, so like ignore me if I'm wrong. But there was just some ideas brought up within SIG multi-cluster that may be something about the CIDR ranges of different other objects. If this is kind of based off of someone who had experience where someone wanted to pull all the inventory of a node CIDR and pod CIDR so they could analyze it holistically. Maybe something about cluster project IDs or regions, though those could be too implementation specific, unless there was some way that a general standard that this information should be here might be useful to any SIG. And then cluster VPCs is kind of in the same category. And this kind of was also inspired because there was some talk about trying to represent a network name, or at least a default network name, in this cluster property, in the About API, as a cluster property for use in multi-network MCS scenarios. And there's some PR history about that too, but we got a little stymied thinking about the multi-network case. So these are just some ideas from us. Happy to take a note from anybody here if there's something this is making you think of, that's some sort of property that any of your code has needed that you smashed in an annotation somewhere, but might put here. And I'll happily take a note to follow up, or again, just making myself available as a point of contact. You can DM me or find me in the SIG multi-cluster Slack channel.
Cool. Thanks, Laura. Anybody have any questions or comments for Laura?
Just a quick thought. I mean, just generally for the network team, I mean, good things like the name of the CNI plugin being used in that cluster be a useful property to make available. Maybe not.
Maybe. I mean, there's not a standard way today to see what your cluster is running through the API. So I mean, it's not a common thing, but I certainly see people have no idea what they're using and like come to me for help with something that's not Calico, for example. But I mean, I know that on the Calico side, we have long since used our own CRD for purposes similar to this. So if this had existed, we might have used this instead. So that was our last agenda item. If there are no more questions and no other topics, then we can call it half an hour early. That sounds like it's it. So thanks everybody for coming. See you in a couple weeks. Don't forget about code freeze.